Morning guys, today we're going to look at sharing in a ratio. Okay, we have done this before but it was a while back, so I'm sure you'll have forgotten. Right, now when we did our ratio we had this little chap who, if I draw him correctly, there we go, he was Adam. Okay, there we go, nice happy smiley face, and he was Adam, and we used Adam to remember that we always have to add, divide and multiply. Okay, so do you remember that now? I know when we did it we had a much better picture of Adam, but you're down to my drawings at the minute. Okay, so add, divide and multiply Adam. Okay, so Fred and George have £30 to share in the ratio of 2 to 3. How much does each person get? Well, this is our Fred number and this is our George number. Okay, now we are going to add, divide and multiply. So what this means is we take the numbers that are in the ratio and that's what we're adding together. So 2 plus 3 equals 5. We then divide the amount of money we've got by what we got when we added. And then I multiply. 2 times 6 is 12. That's what Fred gets. And George's number was 3. So 3 times 6 is 18 with a pound sign, which I forgot. And that's George. And if I check, they add up to £30. So my two final answers are 12 and 18. The other way of doing this is to work with fractions. Fred gets 2/5 of the money and George gets 3/5 of the money. So if I was working out Fred's amount of money, I would be doing 2/5 of £30. Now that is just 30 divided by 5 times by 2. And if you look, that's actually the same calculation I did up here when I used Adam, but I just did it in lots of different pieces. If your brain works best with fractions, you do it with fractions. If you need to use Adam, use Adam. That's what he's there for. Now this is a slightly different question. This is your next step up, and for this one you do need to understand what's actually going on. We've got Fred and George sharing some money in the ratio of 2 to 3. Remember, that's our Fred number and that's our George number. Fred gets £12. How much does George get? Now this is different to the last question because I haven't been told how much money they had to start with. So what I know is that my Fred number is 2 pieces of this ratio. I'm going to call it 2 shares. And I know that that makes £12. So I can work out what one share, one piece of that ratio is, because if 2 is worth 12, 1, I'd get that by halving it, dividing it by 2 would be 6. Now George, he gets 3 shares because that tells me the ratio number there. Okay, so 3 shares, 3 times 6, which is 18. They can use that to ask you to find the total amount of money that was shared out as well. Now that's a different question to the one we did before where you had to share the money in the ratio. You have really got to read the question and work out what it is you've been given to start with. Fred and George again, they've shared some money in the ratio of 3 to 5. Doesn't tell me how much money. George gets £20 more than Fred, and the question went on to say how much money was shared out altogether. Okay, let's have a look. Well, that's my Fred number and that's my George number, and I know that George gets £20 more than Fred. So George take away Fred is £20. Now if I look at my ratio there, George shares take away Fred shares is 2 shares. So 2 shares, 2 pieces of that ratio is worth £20. So 1 share must be £10. And I got that by dividing by 2. Now, if the question had said, how much money does George get? You would have done George. He gets 5 shares, so 5 times 10, which is £50. And if that was what the question asked, that would be your answer. But we were asked, how much money did they share out altogether? So I know that George gets £50. Fred gets 3 lots of 10, which is £30. So the total amount of money shared is £80. Really important that you read the question so you know exactly what you're being asked to find. Right, Ginny and Chu, you can tell which book I've been reading, can't you? Cho, it was pronounced in the book. Share some money in the ratio 3 to 5. What fraction do they each get? Right, so Ginny is 3 and Cho is 5. What fraction? Not asking me how much money, what fraction? If I add Ginny's number and Cho's number together, my total would be 8. So Ginny gets 3 out of 8, 3/8, and Cho gets 5 out of 8, 5/8. That would be the answer to that question. It's not asking me to do anything else. You need to go do some practice now. Speak soon.